1 year later, the community center's rebuilt walls echoed with laughter and joy. Streamers and balloons decorated the same room where, 12 months ago, a miracle had taken place. It was little Ash's first birthday, and the entire town had gathered to celebrate. "Hard to believe it's been a year," Chief Rodriguez said, bouncing the birthday girl on his knee. His firefighter's uniform had been replaced by casual clothes, but he still carried himself with the same protective authority. Asha reached for his smile with tiny hands, her eyes bright with curiosity. The party was more than just a birthday celebration, it was a reunion. Dr. Chen, now officially out of retirement, sat with Mrs. Patel, sharing stories over cups of her famous chai. "Every baby I delivered was special," he said, watching Asha play. "But this one taught us all something about hope." Mira and Raj moved through the crowd, greeting everyone who had been part of their incredible story. The past year had brought many changes to their mountain community. New houses had risen from the ashes, gardens had been replanted, and the forest was showing its first signs of renewal. Young Aisha, now a high school senior, had started a community emergency response club inspired by that night. "We learned first aid, disaster preparedness, and how to help our neighbors," she explained proudly. "Asha's story showed us that we're stronger together." David, whose gaming power bank had helped light the way for Asha's birth, had been inspired to study emergency management in college. "Who knew my gaming obsession would actually save lives?" He laughed, showing off the new emergency communication system he'd helped design for the community center. The walls of the renovated building now displayed photos from that remarkable night. The firefighters creating their protective ring, Captain Lee's helicopter descending through the smoke, and the community members who had become heroes. Below these hung children's drawings of the event, colorful interpretations of a night that had become legend. Mrs. Chen brought out a special birthday cake she baked, decorated with tiny flames made of frosting surrounding a rising phoenix. "From the ashes, new life," she explained, her eyes twinkling. "Just like our little Asha." The name they'd chosen for the baby, meaning hope in Sanskrit, had proven perfect. The community had changed in other ways too. The old emergency protocols had been rewritten, with a special section on helping expectant mothers during disasters. The community center now had a fully equipped medical room inspired by their experience. "We hope we never need it," Mr. Kumar said, "but we'll always be ready." Captain Lee, who had flown through fire to save them, had trained other pilots in similar rescue techniques. "That night taught us that sometimes the impossible is possible," she said, watching Asha toddle between admiring guests. "You just need courage and a community behind you." As evening approached, Raj gathered everyone's attention. "A year ago, we were strangers thrown together by circumstance," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "Today, we're family. Our daughter doesn't just have 2 parents, she has an entire community of aunts, uncles, and grandparents who showed us what real courage looks like." Mira added, "Every parent wants their child to grow up surrounded by love and good examples. Our daughter has the best role models anyone could ask for, people who face challenges with grace, help others without hesitation, and never lose hope." The party continued as the sun set, painting the sky in oranges and reds, colors that once brought fear but now reminded them of their strength. Through the windows, they could see new growth in the forest, green saplings reaching toward the sky. Nature, like their community, was resilient. Little Asha, tired from all the excitement, fell asleep in Mrs. Patel's arms. "See how peaceful she is," the older woman whispered. "Children born in storms carry the rainbow in their hearts." Around her, people nodded in agreement, understanding the deeper truth in her words. As stars began to appear in the evening sky, the gathered community shared stories, laughter, and plans for the future. They had learned that the darkest moments could bring out the brightest lights in human nature. Their story had become more than just a tale of survival. It was a reminder that hope, like life itself, finds a way to bloom even in the most challenging conditions. The renovated community center stood as a symbol of their journey, stronger for having been tested, more beautiful for having been rebuilt with love and purpose. And little Asha, sleeping peacefully among those who had helped bring her into the world, was living proof that even in life's most difficult moments, miracles were possible when people came together with open hearts and helping hands. As the helicopter made its way back for the second group, those still waiting helped each other prepare. They shared water, adjusted masks, and kept spirits up by focusing on the miracle they'd just witnessed. The birth of a new life had given them all strength they didn't know they had. The community center's windows were now glowing orange from the approaching flames, but inside, humanity's best qualities were on display. People who had been strangers just hours ago now worked together like family, ensuring everyone was ready for their turn to evacuate. Each person had a buddy, watching out for signs of smoke inhalation or heat exhaustion in their partner. Through it all, they kept their focus on the success story unfolding, a healthy baby born in the midst of chaos, now safely on her way to proper medical care. It wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was a testament to human resilience and the power of community coming together in crisis. The moment of peace after the birth was short-lived. A massive tree crashed nearby, sending sparks shooting into the sky. Chief Rodriguez burst through the door, his face etched with concern beneath the soot stains. "The fire's changed direction again," he announced. "We need to get everyone out now." The room erupted into controlled activity. Dr. Chen immediately began preparing the newborn and mother for transport, his movements quick but gentle. "We need to keep them together and warm," he instructed, wrapping the baby securely against Mira's chest with a special blanket. Through the windows, they could see the fire's new advance. The wind had shifted again, pushing flames toward them with frightening speed. The firefighters' water streams seemed to evaporate before even reaching the burning trees. The heat had become so intense that the windows were starting to crack. "There's a rescue helicopter on standby," Chief Rodriguez explained, checking his radio. "But this smoke..." He looked up at the thick, dark clouds swirling above them. Flying through that would be incredibly dangerous, but staying put might be even worse. Raj held his wife and newborn daughter close, trying to shield them from the increasing heat. "Whatever we do together," he said firmly. The baby, barely an hour old, slept peacefully against her mother's chest, unaware of the danger surrounding her first moments of life. The radio crackled with static before a voice cut through. "This is Captain Lee from Mountain Rescue. We're going to attempt an extraction. I've got 20 years' experience flying in bad conditions. Get everyone ready." The voice was steady, confident, exactly what they needed to hear. The community center group quickly organized themselves. Mrs. Patel and Mrs. Chen gathered essential medical supplies. David unplugged his power bank, knowing they'd need it for any medical equipment during transport. Young Aisha helped collect everyone's identification and important documents into a waterproof bag. The sound of helicopter blades cut through the roar of the fire, growing louder despite the thick smoke. Flashlight beams from outside signaled where the landing zone would be, the community center's parking lot, now cleared of cars. The firefighters were creating a protective ring, their hoses working overtime to keep the area safe for landing. "We'll need to go in groups," Chief Rodriguez explained. "Mother and baby first, along with the doctor and one family member. Then the elderly and anyone with breathing problems. We've got 3 trips planned." He looked at each person in turn, making sure they understood. The helicopter's downdraft created a temporary clearing in the smoke as it approached. Through the swirling air, they could see the pilots' skilled maneuvering, fighting against turbulent air currents heated by the fire. Captain Lee was living up to her reputation as one of the best rescue pilots in the region. Mr. Kumar, who had been monitoring the air quality with a small device, spoke up. "We've got maybe 10 minutes before the smoke gets too thick again. We need to move now." His scientific certainty added urgency to an already tense situation. Moving Mira and the baby required careful coordination. Raj supported his wife while Dr. Chen monitored the baby. They waited for the signal, then made their way through the heat toward the helicopter. The firefighters created a protective corridor with their bodies and hoses, guarding the precious cargo from flying embers. The noise was deafening as they approached the helicopter. Captain Lee's face was barely visible through the windscreen, but her hand signals were clear and professional. The rescue medic helped them aboard, securing them safely. The baby stayed surprisingly calm, as if understanding the need for cooperation. "See you soon," Raj called to the others as the helicopter lifted off. Those remaining behind waved, their faces showing both worry and hope. The aircraft rose shakily through the smoke, Captain Lee's expertise evident in every careful movement. From the air, The true scale of the disaster became visible. The fire had created its own weather system, with smoke clouds towering thousands of feet into the sky. But they could also see the safe zones beyond, where emergency services had set up evacuation centers and medical facilities. The baby, now wrapped warmly despite the heat of the night, began to nurse for the first time. The simple, natural act brought a sense of normalcy to the extraordinary situation. Life, in all its persistence, continued even in the face of nature's fury. Someone started singing a lullaby, a simple melody that crossed cultural boundaries. Others joined in softly, their voices creating a gentle bubble of peace around the new family. The harmony of different languages and tunes blended perfectly, a testament to their unified community. Dr. Chen completed his checkup with a satisfied smile. "Both mother and baby are doing wonderfully," he announced. "This little one is a fighter." He patted Raj's shoulder, sharing a look of understanding between men who had just witnessed a miracle. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of community and the glow of new life, everyone in the room knew they were part of something extraordinary. They had faced nature's fury together and emerged with a powerful reminder that even in the darkest times, new beginnings are possible. Just past midnight, the moment everyone had been preparing for arrived. The fire outside had reached its peak intensity, but inside the community center, a different kind of energy filled the air. Mira's contractions were now just minutes apart, and Dr. Chen's calm voice guided her through each one. "The baby's coming," he announced, his experienced hands ready. Everyone knows their roles. The room shifted with practiced efficiency. They'd rehearsed this several times over the past few hours, each person understanding their part in this extraordinary event. Raj held Mira's hand, his other hand supporting her back. "You're the strongest person I know," he whispered. The love in his voice carried over the roar of the flames outside. Mira squeezed his hand in response, finding strength in their connection. Mrs. Patel and Mrs. Chen stood ready with clean towels, their grandmother wisdom a comforting presence. Young Aishat kept the cold compressors coming, while David monitored his power bank that kept their essential lights running. The teenagers' gaming equipment, usually used for virtual adventures, now illuminated the most real adventure of all. "I can see the head." Dr. Chen's announcement sent a ripple of excitement through the room. Those not directly helping turned to face the walls, giving privacy while staying close enough to help if needed. The collective energy of the group seemed to gather around Mira, supporting her through each push. Outside, the fire painted the windows orange and red, creating an otherworldly glow. The sound of firefighters' radios crackled with updates, mixing with the encouraging words inside. Chief Rodriguez had positioned his team to protect the building at all costs, understanding the miracle taking place within. "One more big push," Dr. Chen encouraged, his voice steady despite the sweat on his brow. The heat was intense, but nobody complained. They all breathed together, a room full of people united in this moment, willing strength into Mira's tired body. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the chaos, a baby's first cry, strong and clear. The room collectively held its breath, then burst into joyful tears as Dr. Chen held up the tiny newcomer. "A beautiful, healthy baby girl," he announced, his professional composure briefly cracking with emotion. The clock on the wall read 12:34 a.m. as the baby was placed on Mira's chest. Through the windows, they could see the firefighters outside pause in their work, hearing the cry. A few removed their helmets in respect, despite the falling ash. Even the fire seemed to quiet for a moment, as if nature itself was acknowledging this miracle. "Look at her," Raj whispered, tears streaming down his face. "She's perfect." The baby, already calming against her mother's skin, had a full head of dark hair and her mother's determined expression. Her tiny hands grabbed at the blanket Mrs. Chen had ready, showing surprising strength. The radio on Chief Rodriguez's belt crackled to life. "Chief, the winds are changing." The news spread quickly. The fire was being pushed back by an unexpected wind shift. It felt like a gift from the universe, celebrating the new life that had just entered the world. Mr. Kumar, the science teacher, couldn't help but share a quiet observation. "Did you know babies born during natural disasters often show remarkable resilience? It's as if they carry the strength of the moment with them." His words brought comforting nods from around the room. Mrs. Patel brought over a small cup of sweetened tea, a tradition from her homeland for new mothers. In my village, we say that babies choose their birth time for a reason. This little one wanted to remind us all of hope. She touched the baby's tiny foot with gentle fingers. Aisha, who had been updating the firefighters through the window, reported back. They're calling her their lucky charm. The wind shift is holding. The news brought fresh tears of joy to already wet eyes. Through it all, the community's spirit never wavered. When fear threatened to overwhelm them, someone would share a story or start a song. When the heat became unbearable, they found new ways to cope. When the noise of the fire grew too loud, they spoke more softly, creating a bubble of calm in the chaos. As midnight approached, the world outside had become a furnace, but inside the community center, a different kind of warmth prevailed. The warmth of human kindness, of neighbors becoming family, of strangers becoming friends. They were no longer just surviving, they were preparing to welcome new life into the world, a powerful reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope burns brighter than a fire. The evening brought no relief from the fire's intensity. Inside the community center, the air grew heavier despite Mr. Kuma's makeshift filtering system. Every few minutes, the building would shudder as another tree fell nearby, sending tremors through the floor that everyone pretended not to notice. Mira's labor was progressing steadily, but the situation outside was becoming more challenging by the minute. The backup generator coughed and sputtered before finally giving up, plunging the room into darkness for a heart-stopping moment. David's gaming lights suddenly became their main source of illumination, casting a soft blue glow across worried faces. Just like camping, young Aisha said brightly, pulling out her phone's flashlight. Others followed suit, and soon the room was lit by dozens of small lights, creating an almost magical atmosphere. Someone found emergency lanterns in the storage closet, their warm glow adding to the improvised lighting system. Through the windows, they could see firefighters still battling the blaze. Their silhouettes moved like dancers against the orange sky, hoses spraying arcs of water that turned to steam before they hit the ground. The heat was so intense that the windows were warm to the touch. The fires jumped the creek, Chief Rodriguez reported during a quick check-in. His face was streaked with soot, and his eyes were red from smoke. But we're not giving up. We've got foam lines set up around the building. He paused, looking at Mira. How's our mama to be doing? Dr. Chen wiped his forehead with his sleeve. She's strong, but this heat isn't helping anyone. The temperature inside the center was rising despite their best efforts. Mrs. Patel and several others had created a rotation system with handheld fans, taking turns keeping air moving around Mira. The sound of exploding propane tanks in the distance made everyone jump. That's the old gas station, Mr. Patel said quietly. He'd owned the store next to it for 20 years. Nobody spoke for a moment, each person thinking about what else they might lose tonight. Rage hadn't stopped his gentle support of Mira for a moment. He told her stories about their future, about the garden they'd plant, about the swing set he'd build for their daughter. His voice remained steady even when the flames outside painted shadows on the walls. "Remember our first date?" he asked, wiping her forehead. "The restaurant caught fire, and we had to evacuate. You said it was a sign that life with me would never be boring." A burst of laughter broke through Mira's concentration on her breathing. "I didn't mean this exciting," she managed to say before another contraction took hold. The shared memory brought smiles to tired faces. Even in this crisis, love and laughter found their way through. The night grew darker, but the fire made it seem like dawn. The rushing sound of the inferno grew louder, drowning out everything except the closest voices. Young David, still monitoring his power bank, started humming nervously. His mother, a music teacher, recognized the tune and joined in. Soon, several people were softly singing, their voices a gentle barrier against the roar outside. Mrs. Chen appeared with more of her special tea, now served cold. "For your strength," she insisted, helping Mira take small sips. "My grandmother always said that babies born in difficult times have special spirits. They carry the strength of everyone who helped bring them into the world." The firefighters outside had been joined by crews from neighboring towns. Their trucks created a protective ring around the community center, lights flashing through the smoke. The sound of their radios crackled with urgent messages. "Western flank holding. Need more pressure on the north side. Watch those embers." Dr. Chen checked his watch, then Mira's progress. "You're doing wonderfully," he assured her. Your baby is strong, just like her mother. He turned to address the room. We need to be ready. This little one won't wait much longer. The heat continued to build and condensation dripped down the windows. Someone remembered the ice machine in the kitchen and started passing around cold, wet cloths. They worked in shifts, helping each other stay cool, sharing water, and maintaining their protective circle around the soon-to-be mother. The community center buzzed with purposeful energy as everyone found ways to help. Young Aisha, who usually spent her days teaching dance classes in the same room, now ran back and forth with supplies, her long braids swinging behind her. Her mother, who owned the local pharmacy, had thankfully grabbed basic medical supplies before evacuating. The baby won't wait for perfect conditions, Dr. Chen announced, rolling up his sleeves. His weathered hands, which had delivered hundreds of babies over his 40-year career, moved with practiced efficiency as he organized the makeshift delivery area. His wife stood nearby, transforming gym towels into sterile padding using their emergency first aid supplies. Through the windows, they could see the firefighters working tirelessly. Chief Rodriguez directed his team with sharp hand signals, their yellow suits bright against the darkening sky. They were creating fire breaks, clearing anything that could burn around the building. Their dedication gave everyone inside hope. These men and women would not let the flames reach them. Mira's contractions were getting stronger and closer together. Between breathing exercises, she guided the volunteers, her nursing experience proving invaluable. We need more clean water, she managed to say during a brief respite, and those emergency blankets from the shelter supplies. Rage hadn't left her side, except for one quick trip to their car to grab their hospital bag. He wiped her forehead with a cool cloth, whispering encouragement. Their love story had started 10 years ago in a busy Mumbai hospital where they both worked, but he never imagined they'd be bringing their first child into the world like this. The center's kitchen had been transformed into a sterilization station. Mrs. Patel, who usually cooked for community events, now supervised the boiling of instruments and sheets. Her experienced hands, used to preparing meals for hundreds, were just as skilled at managing this crucial task. In my village, she shared while working, we delivered babies with far less than this. Your little one is blessed to have so many people caring for her arrival. Her words carried the wisdom of generations, bringing comfort to everyone who heard them. A young firefighter rushed in, his face streaked with soot. Chief wants you to know we've got 2 engines dedicated to protecting the center, he reported. And there's a medical helicopter on standby at the county airport, but they can't fly in this smoke right now. He paused, then added with a small smile, my sister's a midwife. Never thought I'd be protecting a delivery room on my shift. The air grew thicker with smoke despite their best efforts to seal the windows. Mr. Kumar, who taught science at the local high school, rigged up an air filtering system using box fans and wet sheets. Simple physics, he explained, proud that his classroom knowledge could help. The wet fabric catches the ash particles. 16-year-old David, whose gaming setup had the best battery backup in town, donated his power bank to keep the medical equipment running. Mom always said my gaming would never save lives, he joked, trying to lighten the mood. Guess she was wrong. Through it all, the community's spirit never wavered. Someone started humming a lullaby, and soon soft singing filled the room, a gentle counterpoint to the roar of flames outside. People shared stories of their own births, their children's arrivals, ancient traditions, and modern medicine, weaving a tapestry of human experience that transcended their current crisis. Dr. Chen checked Mira's progress again, nodding with satisfaction. Your baby is doing great, he assured her. Strong heartbeat, perfect position. She's as determined as her mother. His decades of experience showed in his calm demeanor, which spread to everyone around him. The fire's glow through the windows had turned the world orange, but inside the community center, something beautiful was happening. Strangers were becoming family, fear was turning into determination, and the simple act of helping bring a new life into the world was giving everyone strength. Old Mrs. Chen appeared with a thermos of tea she'd somehow managed to prepare. For strength, she said, offering some to Mira between contractions. My grandmother's special recipe. She delivered babies for 50 years in her village. She always said new life finds a way, no matter what. As the afternoon wore on, the scene in the community center became a powerful testament to human resilience. Every person there had a role, a purpose, a way to help. They weren't just waiting out the fire, they were actively creating a safe space for a miracle, proving that even in the darkest moments, humanity's light shines brightest. The mountain roads that usually offered breathtaking views now presented a terrifying challenge. Mira and Rage sat in their car, stuck in a line of vehicles that barely moved. Through the smoky haze, brake lights glowed like distant embers. Another contraction gripped Mira, stronger than the last, and she squeezed her husband's hand until it passed. "We need to think of another plan," Raj said, his voice calm despite the worry lines creasing his forehead. He turned on the car's air conditioning to its highest setting, trying to filter out the thickening smoke. Their baby, ever active, kicked as if agreeing with her father's words. A fire truck's siren wailed behind them, and people hurriedly moved their cars to let it pass. Through the open window, they could hear snippets of radio communication from the firefighters. "Main road blocked, fallen trees, request immediate backup." Mrs. Chen appeared beside their car window, still somehow maintaining her grandmother-like calm. "My son was a doctor before he retired," she said, tapping on the glass. "He's helping set up a safe space at the community center. It's just 2 blocks away." She pointed toward a solid brick building that stood slightly apart from the others. Mira felt another contraction building. The hospital was still 20 minutes away, in normal conditions. Through the smoke, they could see the fire dancing along the ridge, consuming trees like matches. The choice was becoming clearer with each passing moment. Their neighbor, Mr. Patel from the local grocery store, rolled down his window from the car ahead. "My wife gave birth to both our children at home in our village," he called out. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The community center has a backup generator and thick walls." As if nature herself was forcing their decision, a massive pine tree crashed across the road half a mile ahead, its burning branches blocking the last clear route to the hospital. The line of cars erupted in a chorus of honking and shouts. Raj looked at Mira, his eyes asking the question his voice didn't need to. "The community center," Mira nodded, breathing through another contraction. "We don't have a choice anymore." Her nursing training kicked in. She mentally catalogued what they would need: clean water, sterile supplies, light, heat. The center's first aid station might have some basics. They carefully turned their car around, joining a small group of vehicles heading toward the community center. The normally 5-minute drive felt like an eternity as they navigated through smoke-filled streets. Ash continued to fall, coating everything in a ghostly gray blanket. Inside the center, the scene was one of organized chaos. Tables had been pushed aside to create makeshift medical areas. Someone had hung sheets for privacy, and battery-powered lanterns cast a warm glow. The retired doctor, Dr. Chen, was already directing volunteers, his years of medical experience evident in his confident manner. "My wife's a nurse," Raj announced as they entered, supporting Mira through another contraction, "and as you can see, we're about to have a baby." The community sprang into action. Mrs. Patel appeared with clean towels from the center's gym. A teenager who had been volunteering at summer camps ran to get bottled water from the emergency supplies. Someone found a comfortable chair for Mira, while another person set up a fan to keep the air moving. Through the center's windows, they could see the fire's orange glow getting closer. The sound of helicopters overhead mixed with the distant roar of flames. But inside, a different kind of energy was building, one of hope, community, and determination. Dr. Chen checked Mira's vital signs while Raj held her hand. "Your baby," the doctor said with a gentle smile, "has chosen quite a dramatic entrance. But don't worry, between your nursing experience and my decades of delivering babies, we're in good hands." The power flickered ominously, but the backup generator hummed steadily. Outside, firefighters were creating a defensive barrier around the center, their hoses ready. Inside, this unlikely group of neighbors and friends prepared to help bring new life into the world, even as nature's fury raged around them. Mira looked around at the faces of her community members, each one ready to help in whatever way they could. In this moment of crisis, they weren't just neighbors anymore. They had become family. Her baby would have quite a story to tell someday about how an entire community came together during one of their darkest hours to help with one of life's brightest moments. The gentle morning breeze carried the first hints of smoke into the peaceful mountain town of Pine Valley. For Mira Singh, this wasn't unusual during California's dry summers. She stood on her front porch, one hand resting on her 8-month pregnant belly, watching thin wisps of gray dance against the clear blue sky. Her husband Raj joined her, coffee mug in hand, his usual cheerful expression now tinged with worry. "Maybe we should pack some emergency bags," he suggested, squeezing her shoulder gently. Mira nodded, knowing better than to ignore the warning signs. As a nurse at the local hospital, she'd seen firsthand how quickly situations could turn dangerous. Inside their cozy mountain home, the morning news droned in the background. The reporter's voice grew more urgent as she described the Patterson Ridge fire, which had started as a small spark but was now racing through the drought-stricken forest. Mira folded tiny onesies and packed essential medical supplies while Raj gathered important documents and photographs. Their quiet morning routine was interrupted by the sound of sirens. Fire trucks rumbled down their street, their red lights flashing against the houses. Mrs. Chen from next door hurried over, still in her gardening hat. "They're saying the wind's changed direction," she said, catching her breath. "The fire's moving faster than they expected." Mira felt a familiar flutter in her belly. Her baby girl was active today. She'd been having practice contractions all week, but something felt different this morning. The air grew thicker with smoke, and the sky began to take on an eerie orange glow. Their phones buzzed simultaneously with emergency alerts. From their hillside view, they could see the fire's progression. What started as distant flames had become a wall of orange and red, consuming the dry pine forest with frightening speed. The sound was unlike anything they'd heard before. A deep, hungry roar that seemed to swallow everything in its path. The local radio crackled with updates. Mandatory evacuation orders are now in effect for Pine Valley sectors 3 through 7. The Patterson Ridge fire has jumped containment lines. All residents must leave immediately. Follow designated evacuation routes. Mira and Raj exchanged worried glances. Their sector was right in the fire's path. As they loaded their car, neighbors rushed past with hastily packed bags. The usually quiet street had transformed into a scene of controlled chaos. Children clutched beloved toys, elderly couples helped each other into cars, and pets were hurriedly loaded into carriers. The sky darkened further as ash began to fall like gray snow. It dusted Mira's dark hair as she made one final check of their emergency supplies. A sharp pain made her pause. This wasn't just another practice contraction. Her heart raced as she realized their carefully planned hospital route might already be cut off by the flames. Raj noticed her discomfort immediately. Years of marriage had taught him to read every subtle change in her expression. "Is it time?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. Before she could answer, another emergency alert blared through their phones. The main evacuation route was now compromised. Their quiet mountain community, once a peaceful haven, was quickly becoming trapped in nature's fury. As Mira breathed through another contraction, she realized their story was about to take an unexpected turn. Their baby had chosen the most dramatic moment possible to make her entrance into the world. The winds picked up, carrying burning embers that danced through the air like fireflies. Time was running out, and decisions needed to be made. This wasn't just about evacuation anymore. It was about bringing new life into the world in the midst of chaos. The community would need to come together in ways they never imagined, turning an ordinary day into an extraordinary tale of survival, hope, and the miracle of life.